Raphael is one of the most celebrated artists in art history. Painter, draftsman, designer, architect. Someone who really defined the Italian Renaissance through his work. An exhibition like this one will come about only once in a generation. And it's an outstanding and really fresh look that our curator, Carmen Bambach, one of the leading experts in the Italian Renaissance and on Raphael, has been developing and has put together over the last 8 years. It's a milestone in the exhibition history of the Met, and it is the very first large-scale retrospective of Raphael's work in the United States.
Raphael is probably one of the greatest influencers of all time. Somebody who was so famous for so many centuries because he presented a role model for how to compose the perfect composition, how to tell the perfect story, how to create drama visually, how to portray the figure that speaks about also a state of mind. This is an artist who lived a very short time, 37 years, but his fame towered over that of other Renaissance stars. The exhibition is constructed like a journey through Raphael's career, but I was very interested in telling the story of the artist as well as of the art. Yes, he's known for perfection, harmony, and this preternatural ability to invent stories. But when we look at the drawings, we see his incredible discipline. You will see many sketches that look like they are just flowing out of the unconscious of the artist's mind. And then you see how he develops a process with great refinement, but that's why they look effortless in the end. I am Carmen Bambach, Marica Vilcek and Jan Vilcek, curator of Drawings and Prints, and the curator of this exhibition, Raphael, Sublime Poetry. Raphael was born in 1483 in the hill town of Urbino. His drawings are always fabulous from the time of his self-portrait when he was 17 years old, but gradually he also becomes a great storyteller and painter. In the beginnings of the galleries, you will see that Raphael's style is concentrated on more minute figures. They're very delicate. He then goes to Florence to learn what the giants Leonardo and Michelangelo are producing. In Florence, he encounters Leonardo's manner of sketching. Leonardo calls this the bozzare pronto, the quick sketching. And then we see the drastic change in Raphael's manner of drawing in pen and ink. So it is all about the creative juices flowing on the paper, the energy of the arrangements, the sense of motion. He gives us a number of different ideas for a Madonna and Child here. And what he ends up concentrating on most is this active pose for the Christ child who looks like he might be swimming. It's about getting to the gesture with as much freshness as possible. So it was very important to bring together a number of drawings to show this tremendous change in his manner of creating compositions. I think in the drawings is where we really see the artist up close thinking, having an insight into his creative mind. It's been deeply stimulating to work with Dan Kershaw as a designer of this exhibition. We collaborated for almost 3 years to create a narrative that came to life in a three-dimensional way.
One of the challenges was coming up with a way to house this number and quality of works in a space that did not make them seem overwhelming. So to create a passageway going 200 feet down the entire stretch of the gallery through this suite of 3 different scaled chapel-like settings, which are octagonal rooms with tapered ribbed vaults expressing a dome on top of them. And it gives us sort of a sense of place, as well as, I think, this grandeur that we needed for this work.
And it evokes Renaissance architectures.
Right.
And when we have a moment that is about reflecting on a theme, your chapel-like, temple-like forms with these domes really highlight this. I think it's very dramatic. many people have heard Raphael's name invoked most in connection to his paintings of the Madonna and Child. We've constructed an architectural setting for the Madonna and Child images by Raphael that is a little bit like a temple within the larger gallery. And one of the highlights there is the Alba Madonna. And it must be actually my favorite Madonna. Caroline Elenowitz-Hess has been the research associate on Raphael. She is a 19th century art historian, and she has brought an amazing perspective from that point of view. Until now, essentially, his Madonnas were all blonde and very much like a poetic ideal. And here, for the first time, we see the dark-haired Madonna. The clothing is very simple but majestic in a way. And I love the landscape because normally people do not pay attention to Raphael, who was a fantastic landscape painter.
My favorite thing about it is how she seems like someone who, of course, is too beautiful for this world, and the baby is so healthy, but she's sitting on the ground, leaning on this tree stump. It's all about nature. It's not about her being a queen, but it's about her being in touch with the earth and this kind of earth mother ideal.
And then looking at the faces of each one of the figures, they all lock eyes in this amazingly dynamic way. It's a kind of psychological dynamism that is pretty new in Raphael's work. And it is really quite interesting how he's able to balance all that in a way that's almost pastoral. When we go to look at the Madonna of Tenderness, as Raphael makes it probably his most famous type of imagery, this picture of health in a way becomes an aspirational model, because if we go back 500 years, we would be looking at a society where the mortality rate of women of childbearing age was enormous, perhaps even as high as 2/3. In the exhibition, I have very much wanted to recall this history by creating a small group of works that speak to this. We have, for example, an account book of the funeral expenses for the death of Raphael's mother, Magia Charla. She almost certainly died from childbirth complications. We also have a marble relief by Verrocchio and Francesco di Simone Ferrucci that depicts the death in childbirth of Francesca Pitti Tornabuoni. And so these are the religious images that are in people's homes to protect, to appeal to an ideal at moments that are very, very difficult moments in their lives. This goes beyond a very specific religious and Christian context to really look at this as a universal statement about motherhood, childhood, and infancy in the early modern period. We've created our next little temple to highlight the presentation of the portraits by Raphael, because we felt that this is one of the other very important key aspects of his production. Raphael's portraits give us not only the presentation of these figures as they hope to be captured for posterity, but they are also portraits of a kind of personal dimension, including the phenomenal portrait of Baldassare Castiglione, an extremely rare loan from the Musée du Louvre. I mean, the pose, of course, immediately recalls a Mona Lisa. But when we think about Leonardo's Mona Lisa, it's of course revolutionary, but the figure has a lot of details. We have a landscape that is very complicated, whereas here, Raphael really focuses your attention. The background is completely monochromatic, except for the shadow that he casts, and we can see that therefore this is a three-dimensional figure.
One of my favorite things is the way in which the painting and his costume fit so perfectly together. He talks about simplicity of elegance, and here the painting is so simple, but also so beautifully observed and so detailed, and the outfit fits that exactly. The wearing of this gray fur, which is almost colorless, It is so beautiful in its texture. It doesn't take away at all from his beautiful blue eyes, but you want to sink your hands into it. It's just that lush.
Yeah, and one of the things that I love about this portrait is coming close and seeing that Raphael essentially uses a very dry brush to do the little hairs of the fur. And by this point in Raphael's career, he knows where to focus attention and where to loosen attention. And so essentially he takes us around the image in a very, very clever way. And we almost don't realize that in some way we are being manipulated.
Isn't that what a good courtier does, though?
Yes, exactly. There is the word sprezzatura, the art of appearing totally effortless, and it is complete elegance. It's a kind of nonchalance. This is something that Raphael adopts, and Raphael is very much praised for this, his ability to make everything seem so easy. When Raphael arrives in Rome, he is absolutely transformed and continues to be transformed throughout his career until his death. It's the power and the scale of ancient learning, of ancient art, the ruins, the architecture, a new understanding of space as a way to project majesty, importance in his compositions.
My favorite thing about seeing the drawings in this room is being able to see his evolution as he understands the fresco technique more when he arrives in Rome. And he doesn't stop evolving. He keeps getting better and better.
It's amazing to see that incredible sort of different drawing types all in sequence, and we see him thinking and coming up this very monumental style of figures. And it's fun that we have this room reconstructing the frescoes digitally to have at least a sense of that scale, because the drawings give us the insight into how much he cogitated what he was going to be producing. And so it's really quite extraordinary to have this enormous altarpiece here, all at a level where we can appreciate the artistry of the painting and also the extraordinary composition of it. And you then were quite right in insisting on the height of the altarpiece.
His perspective implies you're down below, peering up. All of the vanishing points in the horizon of it set your eye level quite low on this so that they're towering above you.
As we all know, the Saint Cecilia becomes the patron saint of music, and here music is so symbolic. I mean, we have the musical instruments here destroyed. Cecilia in the center is dropping the pipes of the organs as she looks to the heavenly choir.
This is a painting that we hear the music and we feel the textures. So all of this is so sensual and so evocative, and it pulls you in. I mean, even when we came around the corner and we knew it's here, it just calls you to it.
Calls us to it. And especially the Magdalene, because she's looking straight at us, and we become part of the scene. Raphael's painting of the altarpiece of the Transfiguration is a key and concluding moment in his career as a painter. It's an enormous altarpiece, which obviously cannot travel. And so here in the exhibition, we have many of the studies for the Transfiguration. We have several of the drawings in the final scale of the painting. And then on the left, we have the studies after the model. Raphael is figuring out the poses of the different apostles. And my absolute just joy is to have this drawing from the Ashmolean in Oxford. Notice that these figures are based on real-life models. We almost sense the identity of each one, and to look at the different psychological engagement of the figures and the expressiveness also of the hands, the exquisite way of rendering in very sculptural terms the three-dimensionality of the figures. When Raphael then, in a sense, translated these poses of the figure in the altarpiece, the models lose their portrait-like quality and they're stylized and actually quite abstracted. So in many ways, I think It's these drawings that make 500 years melt away between us, the viewer, and these figures who are being timelessly portrayed on these sheets of paper. Every time I look at each one of these drawings, I find something new. My hope in this exhibition has been to communicate a sense of journey through this artist's life and career, to be able to communicate the person behind the art, that we can sense the tremendous and private space of his creative genius, that we have had a very intimate journey, and that there is something deeply spiritual and moving in the act of going through the exhibition.